Welcome back, and I hope you have been holding up well. Preparing for this examination can feel like a slow, private storm. There is the pride of what you are attempting, and there is a quiet pressure that only another aspirant fully understands. This examination can shape the course of your entire life, and that alone is reason enough to protect your focus. On Sociology Desk issue 039, we sit with one story that landed on 1st July 2026 and has real consequences for your Paper 2 script. We will take the current event, find the right concept, name the right thinker, and shape it into an answer that a paper setter would notice. Let us begin. The first event is that on 1st July 2026, the Union government operationalized the Viksit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission Gramin or VB-GRAMG. On the same day, the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which we usually call Mgnrega, stood repealed. In your syllabus, this event sits inside Paper 2, Section C2, Rural and Agrarian Transformation in India, and it also touches Section C5, Peasants and Farmers Movements, because on 1st July, the Mgnrega Sangharsh Morcha and the All India Kisan Sabha called a nationwide strike. Now, you may already be tempted to write this as a policy note. Do not. That instinct is what costs marks. This is a sociology paper, and the examiner is looking for structure and theory. Here is the core structural shift you must name in the first two lines of your answer. Mgnrega was a rights-based act. That means a rural worker could walk into the block office and demand work, and the state was legally obliged to provide it or pay unemployment allowance. VB-GRAMG is a mission mode act. That means work is guaranteed on paper for 125 days, up from 100, but it now depends on annual allocations, on state governments producing their 40% share, and on the center's project categories. The rural worker has moved from being a rights-bearing citizen to being an allocation-dependent beneficiary. That single sentence is your opening move, and it is worth 2 to 3 marks by itself. Now, evidence. In a 20-mark answer, the current event is your evidence. It is not your topic. Keep it to 2 lines. The union notification of 30 June 2026 raised the Telangana wage rate by 1 rupee from 307 to 308. Maharashtra and Andhra Pradesh got 5 rupees each. Sikkim and Nagaland saw larger hikes because their baselines were higher. But the Mgnrega Sangharsh Morcha estimates that the revised wages are still below statutory minimum wages in most states. The funding pattern is now 60-40 between center and state, with 90-10 for the Northeast and Himalayan states. That is your empirical anchor. Do not narrate it, deploy it. Your first thinker is A.R. Desai. In Social Background of Indian Nationalism and in his Path of Development frame, Desai argued that the Indian capitalist state does not deliver welfare as a neutral gift. It delivers welfare as a compromise between two forces. On one side, capital needs cheap rural labor available at low wages. On the other side, the rural poor push for protection. Welfare programs reconcile the two by giving just enough to prevent revolt while never disturbing the accumulation regime. VB-GRAMG is a textbook Desai moment. The state retains the language of guarantee, adds 5 days to the ceiling, and simultaneously moves fiscal responsibility to states and slows real wages. The exam-ready formulation you can use is this. Welfare in Indian capitalism oscillates between concession and containment. Your second thinker is Partha Chatterjee. In the politics of the governed, Chatterjee draws a sharp line between civil society and political society. Civil society is where citizens make claims through law and rights. Political society is where population groups, the rural poor, the informal worker, the slum dweller, make mediated claims on a governmental state. Look at what happened on 1st July 2026. The rural workers did not go to the Supreme Court. They went to the streets through the joint platform of rural workers' organizations, through the All India Kisan Sabha. That is political society in action. Chatterjee's point is that this is not a defect of Indian democracy. It is its actual grammar for the rural poor. Because civil society citizenship was never fully extended to them. Name this in your answer, and you have two well-attributed thinkers. Your third thinker is Karl Marx, and specifically, the Reserve Army of Labor concept from Capital, Volume 1. Marx said that every capitalist mode of production requires a disposable, floating population of labor that can be drawn in and pushed out to regulate wages. Now look at VB-GRAMG. Facial recognition attendance is failing for the poorest workers. Aadhaar-based payment errors have already excluded lakhs. And LibTech India documents that Mgnrega employment between April 2025 and April 2026 dropped by 57%. These technical rules are not neutral. They actively produce a floating rural surplus that then depresses wages in gig work, in construction, in the urban informal economy. When you close your answer, this is your synthesis line. What began on 1st July 2026 is less rural transformation than the disciplining of rural labor under the sign of productivity. Now sit with me on the other side of the desk and let us look at two answer scripts on this event. The first script, the one that will score around 14 on 20, opens with a definition of Mgnrega, narrates its history, describes VB-GRAMG's provisions, and closes with a general comment about welfare. It is coherent, it is not wrong, but it never becomes a sociology answer. The second script, the one that scores 18 or 19, opens with a structural claim in one line. Mgnrega was justiciable entitlement. VB-GRAMG is fiscal mission. It names Desai's path of development frame with the correct work attribution. It spends only 2 lines on the wage hike numbers, uses them as evidence, and then brings in Chatterjee's political society to explain the street strike. It adds a counter-thinker, either André Bataille's disharmonic system critique or a Michel's iron law reading. And it closes with a forward-looking synthesis. The refrain to burn into your muscle memory is this: the current event is your evidence, the theory is your destination. This one habit separates the top ranker from the rest. Here is a probable 20-mark question for Mains 2026, stated as UPSC would state it. In the light of the operationalization of the VB-GRAMG Act on 1st July 2026, critically examine the shift from a rights-based to a mission-mode framework of rural employment in India. If you get anything close to this on the paper, you already have your opening line, your 2 thinkers, your evidence, and your closing synthesis. Practice writing it in 15 minutes in exactly 250 words. That is your muscle memory drill for this week. Let us pull the strands together. On 1st July 2026, Mgnrega was replaced by VB-GRAMG. The structural shift is from rights-based entitlement to fiscally capped mission. A.R. Desai's path of development frame explains this as the Indian capitalist state's welfare compromise. Partha Chatterjee's Political Society explains why worker unions took to the streets rather than to courts. Karl Marx's Reserve Army of Labor explains how facial recognition and Aadhaar payment exclusions produce a floating rural surplus that depresses wages elsewhere. Use the current event as evidence. Let the theory be your destination. That is your paper 2 anchor for this week. Before we close, one honest thought. This preparation is long and it is draining. And there will be days when the material stops feeling like a subject and starts feeling like weight. The candidates who eventually crack this exam are not the ones with the biggest study plans. They are the ones who quietly keep showing up on the days when nothing feels like it is working. That daily return is the real secret. If you found today's episode useful and you want the full-styled PDF brief for issue 039 with the complete answer block, the model answer, the answer skeleton, the quotation arsenal, and the examiner notes for both events, leave your email in the comments below or write to us at team@upscdesk.com